Hey, what's happening, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Free to Grow CFO podcast, where we dive deep into conversations about scaling a D2C brand with a profit focused mindset. I'm your host, Jon Blair, founder of Free to Grow CFO. We're the go to outsource finance and accounting firm for 8 and 9 figure D2C brands. And today I'm here again with my good friend Chris Lang. Chris, I think you're the first ever second time guest on the show. Thanks for joining, man. How are things going?
That's a big honor. Yeah, things are going pretty well. Been a really great year overall, as far as learning so much, and yeah, grateful to be here again.
Yeah, so today, last time you were here, we were chatting about one of the businesses. I would consider Chris to be kind of a serial entrepreneur. He's got his hands in several different things. We chatted about fresh chili the last time he was on, former client of Free to Grow CFO, and really we're chatting about kind of scaling marketing, but ended up having a
Mhm.
really great conversation about story, which is something that's so front and center in your content, which I love. But today we're actually talking with Chris about his focus on a separate venture that he has. He's also co-founder of Move Forward. And today, what we're going to be talking about is something a little bit outside of kind of the getting into numbers and scaling, but something that is, I would say, probably even more important, which is how entrepreneurs build and live a life of holistic health, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all humans. It doesn't matter if we are also D2C brand founders or operators. We are humans, right? And as Chris is a fellow Christian, as we believe, created by God, right? And so we're going to talk about how entrepreneurs can live a balanced life that includes things like faith, family, focus, fitness, and finances. And so before we get into chatting about that, Chris, the people who listen to the show know a bit about your background as it relates to kind of leaning into starting and being a part of the fresh chili journey. But walk me through your journey to co-founding Move Forward and walk us through a little bit about what Move Forward does.
Definitely, move forward is a result of understanding life is more than just about business, and so it's about finding that balance and purpose in business and life. And so, what I've noticed over and over again in business, whether it's been successful or whether it's been a so-called failure on paper, is that there's so many determining factors to what goes into each one of those opportunities, and it has to deal with your faith, your family, your focus, and your finances, and and so I think that's where it's like I wanted an opportunity to partner, with someone. His name is Greg Bowles. He's out of Dallas, and he's a owns the largest home inspection company in DFW area. And so, but he's a friend that I've known. He's a former pastor, and he does a lot of coaching consulting with other businesses and entrepreneurs. And he was someone who was really strong and his focus and finances. And he's also, a man of faith, and his family are, we go on vacations together. And so that's something that we kind of talked about. Hey, let's really team up because, I was really coming from a place where I was really broken. Um, about, I would say, for a few years now. And each day is kind of step, forward in that clarity. But overall, it's just to help entrepreneurs balance beyond business their lives.
Yeah, man, this is something that's near and dear to my heart. This is manifested. This kind of holistic philosophy about business and life is something that um, is very pervasive in my personal and business life. I was, and I still am, a little bit on the side, an EOS coach. And EOS, for those of you who don't know, the entrepreneurial operating system, it's an operating system. It's an actual structure and framework for thinking about planning and running your business. And it doesn't matter if you like StratOps or EOS or you follow a guy like Michael Hyatt who has the full focus planner, whatever. Or you follow Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey has his own. I forget what his system is called, but all these systems are all. What do they all have in common? Intentionality and purpose, right? And when you get down to the root of it, why does that stuff matter? Because humans were created um, to live life with a sense of purpose. When you find people that are depressed, in my experience, when you find people that are depressed, they've lost their sense of purpose or they're wrestling with their sense of purpose, right? And when you find people that are happy, they're doing the things they're doing in life, whatever they are, business or otherwise, they're doing them on purpose, right? And the funny thing is the phrase on purpose is a common phrase. Oh, I did this on purpose, right? But if you really think about those words on purpose, it's in alignment with a purpose that gives meaning to the thing that you're doing, whatever that is, right? And so these things, it's funny, in the system scaling up, they tell the people who are implementing that operating system into their business to first do a one-page personal plan. I believe it's OPP. And this grid that they create is a grid that across the top has time horizons. So like 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, next 90 days. But down the side, it has faith, family, focus, fitness, and finances. The same, they call it the 5 F's, right? And the reason why we are going to have a conversation today in relation to those 5 F's is because when you think about your faith, whatever it is, you think about your family and you think about what you're focusing on, you think about your fitness and your physical health, and you think about your finances, it's those 5 F's are a great holistic way to think about your life, and that when those things are in balance, we tend to be living life on purpose, right? So the 5 F's: faith, family, focus, fitness, and finances. Why are those so important to you personally, Chris?
Uh, well, I believe it, starts with my faith, number one. I mean, that's always the area that I want to make sure that, I have the most balance and harmony. And I feel like that's where I haven't had in the past when I am sort of losing focus, or what I feel is kind of not walking in God's path, in my life and for my families. And so, if I'm not focused on my faith first and my family, fitness, finance, focus, it all suffers because of that. And so faith is important too, because it's ultimately what I believe that I'm, called to be on this earth for, is to be a servant and to serve others. And if I'm serving myself or serving my needs or serving myself in a loathing type of way, then everything else will kind of falter. And so, um, even though faith has always been important to me, as we learn in life, there's all these kind of peaks and valleys that we go through, that where faith, becomes a different priority for us. And, for me, making it the priority every day that I wake up has been the overall change in my life.
Well, and so it's interesting that you say he starts with faith because you and I are both Christians, so we believe in the God of the Bible, right? Even if you don't believe in the same faith that Chris and I do, everyone I believe has some form of faith in their life. Um, it in more general terms maybe is what you believe about the purpose of mankind, right? And everyone believes in some purpose, even if that purpose is for me to just live a selfish life and enrich myself. That is still your version of faith, right? And so it actually, as a human, it has to start with faith, which is maybe we'll call it your worldview, right? Because that's the lens through which you're going to view your family, your focus, your fitness, and your finances. So actually, whether you think you have faith or not, I guarantee you do. We all do as humans. It may not be the same as mine and Chris's, but you have some view about the world, and that's where it all starts, right? Um, the second one, family. What is the importance to you, not just of family in general, but how that helps you excel in business and in life, making sure that that's number two on the list?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, in business, I'm doing this for my family. I think that's kind of like the most common answer that we would probably, hear. I'm doing this for my family, doing this for my family. But, if we really were to strip away, if we weren't entrepreneurs, you know, or business people, and then what is our role in our family? And, for me, it is kind of to ingrain a sense of security in them. And that security is not always financial,
Hmm.
but it's a loving security that they have. And so, for me, making sure that they feel emotionally and physically loved is is what kind of family means to me. It doesn't mean about just taking care of them. That's all a byproduct of kind of making sure that your family's emotional needs are taken care of, because we've seen it so many times where you have a lot of families where their physical needs are met through the roof, but emotionally, like, the family's a wreck. Divorce is on the horizon. Uh, the kids are going to rebel. And that's something where my wife and I are just very intentional with our two children. And we are a family. And these other things, they don't define us. It
Hmm.
may be what we do, um, but they don't define us. And we're there for each other, kind of first and foremost. And to that note, too, my wife and I will be celebrating 20 years next summer.
Congrats, man.
And oh, thank you so much. And it's because we've learned that we're there to serve, one another.
Hmm.
And it's not always about our needs first. And it's not, from a selfish view, but we're ultimately there for the same purpose of really to glorify God. And what does that look like through our marriage, through our family, and through our relationships?
It's funny. So our pastor always says, uh, people people always tell me that marriage is 50-50. He's like, marriage is not 50-50. It's 100%, 100%, meaning that each person is in it 100% every single day, pulling their own weight in the marriage, right? In the relationship. I don't just come to the table 50%. And if you think about any relationship, it's 100%, 100%. Like, you got to be there. You're in it 100%, regardless of what happens on the other side, right? But I think another interesting thing I was thinking about as you were talking, and like weaving in the entrepreneurial spirit with family, is actually something you posted on LinkedIn, I think, over the weekend, about your boys, having your boys with you at the farmers market, slinging goods from one of your other companies, right? And the point being, like, there's a way that we can take what we do as entrepreneurs, right, and share that with our family, and not just use the business, not just use being an entrepreneur to make money for the family, but to actually teach them entrepreneurial like qualities, so that they can carry on. This is the future generation, right? Our kids are the future generation. And like, what gets kids excited? How do kids know what to do, or what they could possibly do later in life? They have to be exposed to it, and that's a big job as as parents. Like, I don't expect every one of my kids to necessarily start a business or businesses the way that I have, but I believe every person has to have some amount of entrepreneurialism, because really, strip the word business aside, what is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is someone who sees a gap in the world and fills it, right? Sees a need that's unmet and fills it, right? And so actually, I think everyone has a duty to be entrepreneurial in some way, shape, or form. I think stay-at-home moms have just as much of a duty to be entrepreneurial, right? By seeing an unmet need and pulling together resources. Basically, like, actually, here's another way to think about it. An entrepreneur sees the landscape of resources, things that could be pulled together to be used for something. They see a gap somewhere in the world with an unmet need, and they go grab resources and they pull them together and they meet that need. You do not have to
Right.
start a business to be entrepreneurial. And as it relates to being an entrepreneur and family, that's a big duty that I believe that we all have as entrepreneurs, is to raise up the next generation of entrepreneurs, whether they're going to start businesses or not. Um, so the next thing on the list of the 5 F's is focus. This is near and dear to my heart because I am a productivity nerd. I've read so many of the books. I'm a huge fan of Michael Hyatt. He has book that was like, you can see it on my bookshelf over here. It's like super formative in my life. It's called Free to Focus, right? And the older I get, the more that I find that my stress and lack of achievement is actually self-induced. I allow it to happen to myself. And you know what it always is? I lose focus. I allow the unimportant to creep in and block me from the important. And one of my other pastors, he used to always say, "Hey, are you minoring in the majors and majoring in the minors?" Meaning like, if you're majoring in the minors, you're filling your life with these minor details, these minor like tasks and things that are not of major importance. You want to be majoring in the majors, not majoring in the minors, right? So talk to me a little bit about the importance of focus when it comes to being a holistically healthy entrepreneur.
Yes, I think, this is something that I am in the midst of in my life of trying to understand what that means and also to achieve it. Meaning, on paper, I have 8 different businesses. That is not focus, right? On any level, And so I'm actually in the midst of having all these difficult conversations with partners where I don't believe I can add value to this business anymore. I need to step away. And I need to also have other conversations where, hey, I need to double down on this business. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, I think one of the, I don't want to say biggest lies, but we just think we can, as entrepreneurs, we think we can just achieve anything once we've achieved one thing. And it's not the case. I've have failed miserably at a restaurant and a coffee shop. Why? That's not my skill set. It's not e-commerce. It's not digital marketing. And, I failed spectacularly at both, right? So again, it was because I wasn't focused that have led to some of my biggest mistakes that have also cost me financially as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, I need to make sure that I'm focused in a way that I can be serving my partners
Mm-hmm.
from a business standpoint and in the greatest capacity that I can. And as you know, with Free to Grow, uh, financial cash flow is the most important thing that we can achieve in business. And so, and profits. And so we need that. And when you diversify yourself to where nothing is really making money at the end of the day, then you're basically in a zero sum game because you've lost your lack of focus.
Man, there's a lot there that I
I
want to dig into. No, I mean it's that
No, it is.
such so a couple of things. One, I've actually I don't know I know that you know Nick Shackelford, but he
Yeah.
posts a lot of content on LinkedIn about his various businesses, and and one thing I think this was last week, he was talking about this made me feel better because I'm kind of like you. I'm looking at starting all these different things. I currently have 3 businesses, and sometimes I wonder, like, is this a trap? Is this a mistake? Right? And um, Nick was talking about in his content recently. I think last week he was like, I think there's a lot of people who would kind of like condemn what I'm doing, owning so many businesses. But what I have done is I've brought in partners that complement my weakness. They have a strength in that business, right? And the role that I play in that business is where I am strong, right? And so he's not the point being he's not just going and there's still intentionality. There's actually what he doesn't realize is he's saying there is a focus that he has within each of those businesses. So I actually do believe there's a way I do believe there's a way to start multiple businesses, but be very intentional about what your role is in each of those businesses. And what I think I'm starting to realize is Free to Grow, me and my business partner Jeff, we are the main operators in Free to Grow. For this season in life, Free to Grow is the right place for me to be one of the key operators. All other businesses that I start, I do not have the time to be the key operator. I can be I can play some role in strategy, I can play some role probably in marketing, possibly in sales, probably possibly coaching, maybe providing some capital, but I could not be the main operator in multiple businesses. And so there's this I will call it another dimension to focus, where you may be able to do something that appears unfocused, owning, having your hand in a bunch of different businesses, but you can do it in a focused manner by deciding what is the focused role that you will have in that business, and then placing other partners and or key employees in the other areas that need focus that you don't want to or can't do well. And so I like to use a framework that comes from Michael Hyatt. He calls it the Freedom Compass. The Freedom Compass, he basically takes everything you could possibly be doing for your business, and he puts it into one of 4 quadrants. And the quadrant that he says makes you feel free and where you're the most valuable to the business is the quadrant in which there's an intersection of your greatest passion and your greatest proficiency. So you're really, really good at it. You're proficient, right? Proficient means really, really good. And it's one of your greatest passions. And if it's outside of one of those, you should either eliminate it, automate it, or delegate it. And so that's a framework I use all the time. And the reality is, when you're really focused on stuff that you're really good at and that you really love, you just find the energy to get it done. You don't have to search for the energy. You don't have to muster it up, right? And again, let's go back to family and faith really quick, because we're going through the 5. Like, if you feel alignment with what you're doing every day in any given business or businesses, or even outside of business, other areas in life that you're focusing on, if you feel alignment with your faith, your worldview of how things work in the world and what your purpose is, you feel alignment with your family and the role that you have in your family, and you feel like you're focused on areas that you are proficient at and really love, man, you're building the building blocks, right, of just like a great life and something that brings you energy every single day. So on the topic of energy, let's go next to fitness. Where does fitness fit into all of this, and why is it so important for being a holistically healthy entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, this one is we can unpack greatly as well too. But the mental clarity that you receive every day from working out is unmatched. There's there's a personality on Twitter I love. He says he's gonna go see his therapist, and it's like 225 deadlift. You know what I mean? He's just like, I'm gonna go see my therapist, right? And for me, I was I played sports in college, and I worked at multiple gyms in my 20s, and then life kind of happened, and I got away from being in the gym. And so last December I committed to being in the gym again, and I found myself just amazed that, man, I love this so much. Like, why
Mm-hmm.
did I stop? What was it? And so just being, back in the gym. And then also I went carnivore for a couple months. And that was life changing. It truly was. And a sense of the mental clarity and energy and ability to make decisions. And it is something that I don't know what the long term effects of it are, but I plan to do it again, and I don't know for how long this time. But fitness, it also is our nutrition and what we put in our body. And again, we're not hunters and gatherers anymore. So, but there's all these nutrients that our body needs that we used to receive. And so, um, but it comes down to that. If we want to have that balance where mentally we can be there in our faith and our family, and our focus, it kind of starts with our fitness. It's kind of, um, I don't know how we would map out this, system, but it's something that's equally as important to everything else, and the way that we approach each of the other areas of our lives.
Yeah, man. It's crazy because I think my gut. This is just what my gut tells me. If I'm wrong, you can tell me. But
Hmm.
when you said life happens, it's like you have kids, you get
Yeah.
married, you have kids, and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, my routine is all messed up because I
Yep.
have, for me, I have 3 kids. You have 2 kids. You have a
Hmm.
wife and multiple kids. and you have to integrate your routines with their routines, and usually
Hmm.
their routines can be like in one way, shape, or
Yeah.
form much less predictable than your own
Yeah.
routines, right?
Yeah.
And so like
Definitely.
the first things to go are sleep, right? Especially like when you have an infant, like you throw sleep out the window. It just, you got to feed them every 3 hours. You got to attend their needs, keep them alive, right? And then like if you're not even getting sleep, to me, I think about like fitness, like kind of like building blocks. If you're just not even getting enough sleep, yeah, you can go work out to offset the lack of sleep for a little bit, right? And it will work for a little bit. But eventually it loses its power, and you've got to get some sleep, right? And that's foundation number 1. And then there's the nutrition, right? Like you were just saying, and then there's the some form of moving your body. We'll call it moving your body, right? And unfortunately, I played football and baseball, and I injured my knee, and so like I can't run anymore, which sucks. I love running. I love the pump from it, but I've also done a lot of reading and found that like any sort of even just like medium intensity, including brisk walking, if you do it regularly, like at least 5 times a week, the benefits to your heart and your body are actually massive. So it's actually not about how intense you go; it's about doing something that you can just be consistent at, right? And and then on the nutrition side, this is kind of a new journey that my family's been on, my wife and I. Uh, like it, and it really kind of started with having kids. Is like starting to be more aware, become more aware of what is in all of this processed food that we're giving to our kids, right? And like you and I feel like we came from this generation. Our parents were kind of like the first processed food generation, and they like loved, like my parents are big snackers, and like like mass produced processed food kind of happened in their generation, and so it was very pervasive in our life growing up, and we didn't think anything of it. But the the thing that's kind of blows me away is just like the massive amounts of, well, the fact that everything is stripped of its fiber and nutrients, right? So it's just like there's no nutrition in all of that stripped flour and rice and all that kind of stuff. But then the amount of salt and sugar that's in stuff is just like outrageous. And I see it with my kids when they have these snacks that are marketed to kids. They go crazy because of the sugar content in them and the fits that they throw when they can't get them. And it's started. I read this book like, I don't know, several months back, actually written by a nurse and nutritionist who's also a Christian, and she took it from the Christian perspective, which is like our bodies weren't made to process this this highly processed food that is like devoid of all of its actual like natural nutrition. And as soon as we started eating more, we're not 100%, right, like perfect at it. I'd say 70 to 80%, but just that 70 to 80% has made all the difference in the world of like how good we feel, our brain's ability to process information, and mental clarity and energy. And we need all those things to make it through the sport of business and life, because the sport of business and life and staying on course is exhausting. And so you cannot, I'm realizing more and more as I get older, especially as you get older, you've got to nail sleep, you've got to nail nutrition, and you've got to nail some form of moving your body. And when you do those things, everything is easier. It's crazy,
Right.
you know?
It is. It is. It's wild. And so sleep again. I used to be someone who would work until 1, 2 in the morning, get 4 hours of sleep, and just go. I can't do that anymore. I need 8 hours, and I protect that. Like I love going to bed at 10 o'clock now. It's the weirdest thing, It's like,
Yeah, getting that
but it's
sleep.
like, yeah, you perform better with it.
So, one thing that I'm realizing as we're talking through this, again, we've gone through faith, family, focus, fitness. Like whenever there's a big tech boom, there's always like a bunch of like, you know, productivity hackers that put out these crazy things about like how to hack, scaling your startup by sleeping 1 hour a night, like how to sleep hack, how to nutrition hack, and all of those fads, they eventually you burn out, right?
Right.
What we're going through here today with the 5Fs, it's not just living a life, a business and personal life that's holistically healthy and that's on purpose. It's about living a life in business and in personal life that withstands the test of time, that keeps that so that you can go, you can execute for the long haul, right? Because I'm realizing success in life and business comes through the long game, making it through the long game. It's not about timing your business perfectly or timing, your investment perfectly. It's about staying in business or staying in the stock market for the most time, for more time than everybody else. And how do you do that? You stay on purpose with your faith, with your family, with your focus and your fitness. The fifth F we're talking about now, finances. Where does finances fit into all this, Chris?
Yeah, finances is different for everyone's kind of life goals. Um, Kind of like what we talked about, what do you value? And we all have different reasons for, being in business or wanting to make money. And, it's interesting because right now there's a huge influx of like money Twitter, as we like to call it, or money Instagram,
For sure.
and these guys have learned to make a lot of money, and then where are they putting it? And we see the Lambos and the jewelry and everything else. And so just knowing that life is beyond, you know beyond material things, right? And so how do you want to set your family up long term? And what cash do you need to focus on certain investments or certain businesses that you want to grow? Because businesses, especially businesses that are in growth, require almost all your capital, right? And so what do you have that's kind of cash flowing? Because I'll even back up here, I think if I were to go back, a handful of years, having a cash flowing business is really the most important thing that we can kind of do in the beginning of our career. And then if we want to go and start another business to solve another problem in the world, understanding that cash flow is going to be needed you know, for you to live and for you to have savings or investments, and that this other business is we're going to require, another set of capital that you could get through loans or financing or just self-funding. And so I think it's one of the issues, going back to what I was just saying with like money Twitter. It's like there needs to be more education in this space.
Sure.
As you
Yep.
know,
And one and I will say I'll take it one step further. Education that is down to earth and real and not that is clickbait headlines. I'm so sick and tired of the clickbait headlines. I think you may have liked one of my LinkedIn posts from a couple of weeks ago. I got an email from one of these like uh solopreneur gurus, and the headline was like how I run an 8-figure like business 4 hours a week. And I'm like, I'm done with these headlines, okay? Because like it's BS. And I guarantee you there's way more to the story, but that gets you to click, that gets you to buy his content, right? And like that's why I've taken this position of like, no, really great entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs for their whole life. And so we're not racing to try to hit it big and to time everything perfect, time the market, time the exit. We're trying to just build great businesses, right? That matter, and like you're saying, have a financial model that's actually viable, right? And to stay in it for the long run, because that's actually where wealth is built. Whatever form of wealth you're looking for, whether you're talking about putting money in the stock market, you're talking about investing in real estate, you're talking about growing your own businesses, you will build if you make good decisions that have sound financial models to them, right? Um, and you just withstand the test of time, you stay in it for the long run, you're gonna build some amount of wealth. Are you gonna like leave opportunities on the table? Miss like selling at the top of a bubble? Of course. That's gonna happen. You can't time those things perfectly. And some people do get lucky. That happens. But so much of this like advice is based on these stories or that are either clickbait and BS, and they're sound bites that are pulled out of the truth and make it seem like something else, or they are stories of people who are the exception and not the rule. The rule is build, make sound, financially fundamental decisions and stay in the game longer than everyone else. That's the rule. The exception is I sold my tech company right before the dot-com bubble burst. That's the exception. That is not the rule. Don't follow that business plan, right? And so I totally agree with you. It sucks because I'm actually, you can tell I'm fired up about this because it actually upsets me. It upsets me because people make money off of all these, off this quote financial education that is really kind of a get rich quick scheme disguised as not a get rich quick scheme, you know? And I think the other thing too that I want to say on the concept of finances is that you're going to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes, and it's okay. Like, um, I guarantee you, like, the Rockefellers have tons of stories they could tell about all the mistakes they made. Dave Ramsey's business was born out of a massive mistake where he basically was on the verge of bankruptcy, right? And so, but what we try to do as CFOs is help you make mistakes that that don't kill your business, so you can still live to fight another day, right? And go, I made a mistake, but it didn't put me out of business. Here's what I learned, and I'm not going to do that again, right? Um, and so I mean, what are some of the most important lessons besides you've talked about this like cash flowing, like figure out how to get your business to cash flow, which is super important. Are there any other like stories from your 8 businesses, right? That I mean, which because that's a lot of whether you feel like you made mistakes or they were quote failures or not. You learned a ton. What else did you learned about finances that you're going to take into the next business that you started, that you're going to take into the fewer number of businesses that you're going to double down on?
Yeah, to not trust your accountant blindly. This might be the number one mistake I think a lot of entrepreneurs make is, we think our accountants are dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and it's not always the case. And so you need to be on top of your numbers every week, every month. And that's a mistake that, since I was busy focusing on everything else, um, that has been an expensive mistake in my life. I think another, is to not, is to, this is a hard one because it's like, we want to solve a problem. The definition of business is solve a problem, and we are emotionally passionate to do so. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of our decisions are emotionally. And so like, but there's a lot of times in your business when you're like, hey, payroll cannot be at this number, but we're emotionally attached to certain, employees, individuals.
Totally.
Um, and so we make a lot of emotional decisions, and we need to make those decisions faster. And what I've learned that it's better for the employee long term and it's better for
Totally.
your business short term. And I didn't have the experience to know that, but I can say I will never happen again. And so, and then I think as a kind of as just a third takeaway is when you have something that cash flows to always make sure that you're always keeping that pipeline going, So again, there's a multiple different types of businesses, but let's say for our audience, say it's an agency or consulting or coaching or services, like keep that top of funnel going, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that you're keeping the leads going and that you're not distracted by another endeavor. And all of a sudden, you haven't talked to anyone about your services in the last 6 months. And all of a sudden, you're like, hey, what happened here? Right. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where that focus comes in is like, hey, making sure that things that are cash flowing, that we are focused on them and that whatever, even if it means like, hey, I got to get up at 5 o'clock every morning to do this, make time to put your eyes, on your accounting,
Yep.
uh, on your numbers and on your sales. I guess that's to sum
Totally.
it up.
No, no, I mean, you know this, and I actually talk about this a lot in my content. The number one issue we come across when we talk to potential brands that are, want to potentially work with us, the
Mm,
number one issue is that they had some CPA that knows nothing about e-commerce
I know it's
looking at their books or
so
doing
hard.
their books. And so actually what that meant was books that were being done in a way that were just optimized for tax returns, right? But not optimized for the owners and managers actually understanding how the business is performing and what decisions they might have to make based on that. And we just see it again and again and again and again and again. And I say this a lot. You don't have to become. You don't have to go get an accounting degree, but you do need to know enough that you know what good looks like and you know what bad looks like. And I'll even go as far as to say that if you're a founder, you have to know enough about marketing and sales and operations and accounting and finance, even if only one or two of those things are your focus, right? Like your personal focus, you have to know enough to know what good looks like and what bad looks like, because you're still ultimately responsible for whoever you're delegating that stuff to or outsourcing that stuff to. And so that is a great challenge, but that is why entrepreneurs who can crush that make the big bucks, because it's hard, but it's totally possible, right? It's totally possible. And then the other thing that you mentioned was, you can't ever stop prospecting. Whatever business you're in, doesn't matter if you're in an ecom brand. I have a lot of ecom brands who are like, we just want to cut ad spend. I'm like, well, what other prospecting are you going to do then? Like, because at some point that's going to come back to bite you. Like, you can never stop prospecting. And I think a lot of people don't realize, no matter what business you're in, there's actually a longer tail than you think in terms of like someone first becoming aware of you and then finally buying. There are some people who become aware, they're in the market and they're like, bam, perfect, this checks all the boxes, and they buy. But so many people become aware and then they're part of the long tail many months later, and they finally buy. And so if you think about, I mean, if you really think about the analogy of like, or like of a funnel, if you stop dropping people into the top of it, eventually there's no one coming out the bottom, right? And so it just doesn't matter what business you're in, that system has to always be tended to. Now, can you delegate that to someone else, to other people? Yeah, you can. It doesn't always have to be you as the founder, but if no one is working on it, it will eventually dry up. It may take a long time. I actually think that's where the trap is that it can take months. Sometimes it could take years for the funnel to dry up, but it does eventually if you are not actively putting new prospects into it. So I think that's fantastic advice. So I think the last thing that I want to chat about here is boundaries between work and personal life. Do you have any sort of, I don't want to say hacks, I don't, but like, do you have any guiding principles that you use when it comes to setting boundaries between your businesses and then your personal life?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I take a lot of pride in is, even though I am a serial entrepreneur, it is my 9 to 5. So every morning I wake up my children, my wife and I make them breakfast, and we make them lunch. We go outside and wave to them as they drive off to school. And, I have family, I have a little bit of one-on-one time, with my wife. And, and then I get ready and I come to work. And when I'm here, and, might be 5 or 6, depending on the day. But while I'm here, I'm solving problems. And then I go pick up my son from football practice. We go home, we make dinner as a family, we have dinner as a family around the table, and we spend time. So last night, my daughter and wife, they were painting each other's nails, watching a TV show. And actually, what I did with my son last night is I really introduced the 5 F's concept to him. And I actually bought him a full focus planner, and we actually started filling that out.
I love it. My full focus plan is right over here. I live and
Awesome.
die by it. My wife has one as well.
That's awesome. And so we started doing that, and then, we say, good night to them. And so again, um, those boundaries are in a sense of like that faith and family and, fitness. They're all the main focus, before, kind of business starts and ends. And so I would say that's the main thing that we try to focus on as a family.
Yeah, that I love that. I have a similar kind of boundaries. I mean, and actually Michael Hyatt, I know I keep he's the one who invented the full focus planner, but he's a big, like, the content, the books he's written, his podcasts are big reasons, or the driving force behind a lot of my guiding principles when it comes to the balance between work and family. But um, he always says, like, you have to set a start time and you have to set an end time to your day, because as an entrepreneur, no one's going to set it for you. You have to set it for yourself, right? And so I actually have no, no. Yeah, exactly. I still think about business. Let me say something that might be freeing to people that are listening. I can't turn off being an entrepreneur, and I don't. But I can be present with my family at 5:30 p.m. every day, even if I'm still thinking about work. And part of being an entrepreneur, that doesn't ever turn off, and that's okay. It's something I wrote about on LinkedIn recently. Like, I've been in the season of writing on LinkedIn about, like, stuff about giving um, grace to entrepreneurs, because I think we're all so hard on ourselves. I know we are. We're all so freaking hard on ourselves, and there's no one who's gonna. People rarely tell us we're doing a good job because we don't have a boss. We're our own boss, and we're actually the hardest boss that we could ever have. We're and no one's gonna tell us to stop, right? Like, no one's gonna tell us to stop. And so, um, I actually have my start time and end time in my calendar, and I bookend my days with meals with my family as well. Like, I have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old boy, while my wife is taking my daughter, who's 5, to elementary school. I make them breakfast every day. I put away the dishes for my wife. I do some things around the house. I clean up the house so that it's not absolute chaos when she gets back, because does enough of that all day long taking care of our family. And then I start my work day, and at 5:30 we have dinner every day, and that's when my work day is done. Every once in a while, and when I mean every once in a while, I mean like a few times a month. Do I have to log in at night? Yeah, I do, because I didn't
Right.
get something done. But once the kids
Yeah.
are down for bed, they've been bathed and they've been put down. Every once in a while, do I have to get a thing or two done on the weekend? Yeah. So every once in a while, do I say, hey, I'm going to be late for dinner today because there's this thing that got scheduled and I couldn't move it? Yes. But those are very clearly the exceptions, not the rules. And because I've placed those boundaries, there's friction. There's friction to scheduling them. And because they're in my calendar, whenever I, like, look at possibly scheduling something over them, I go, ugh, I'm scheduling over my morning time with my boys having breakfast, or over dinner with my family. And so it's just, if there's anything from all this, it's like, set boundaries and be okay with it not being perfect. Michael Hyatt always says, if he calls it mapping out your ideal week, and if your ideal week is 70% on point, that's the goal, 70 to 80%. It's not 100% perfection, right? But if you are 70 to 80% in alignment with what you've intentionally laid out as your ideal week, which includes boundaries at the beginning and end of your day for your personal life, you will be living a life of far greater success, achievement, and intentionality than most people out there. So in closing here, I always like to close with, like, a little fun little personal question. What's a little known fact about Chris Lang that you think people might find shocking or surprising?
I know I mentioned this to you before, but that I learned to read, write, and speak Cherokee as a child. So I was raised Cherokee in Oklahoma, and it's really what inspired me about the story. What was this nation trying to preserve its history, its stories, its language, and so
That's
I
so
think that
cool.
basis, yeah, I think that basis has given me a lot of perspective, and I'm super grateful for that opportunity.
Can you still read and write Cherokee?
So I can't write or read. It's something like, I mean, if I were to go back, I would say "Sio Sio Tilhiju," which means hi, how are
Yeah.
you? And then if they asked me how I was, I'd probably say "Giyosi," which means I'm hungry.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I love
I know
it.
how to get around and get fed. That's about
Yeah.
it. So
No,
no,
that's
but
all
it
good,
is
man.
something. It's a,
That's
it's a
cool
very
though.
complicated. I think it's a, how there's different levels and languages.
Mm-hmm.
to learn. I think level 5. I think it's like a level 5 as far as the how hard it is. And so it's not native, like I definitely know more Spanish now than I know Cherokee.
For sure. That's cool, man. I love that. Um, so before we land the plane here, where can people
Mm.
find out more about you and about Move Forward?
Yeah, moveforward.co is our website, and at Chrisling Social across platforms is where you can find me.
Definitely check out Chris's content. I read it every single day. It's really, really
Um,
awesome stuff. And definitely check out Move Forward. I mean, look, I don't think there's an entrepreneur out there that isn't looking for holistic health and, as Michael Hyatt calls it, the double win, which is like winning at work and succeeding at life. And
mhm.
so, if you're looking for someone to come alongside you and help you in that journey, check out Move Forward and see what they can do for you. And don't forget, if you're looking for more helpful tips on scaling a profit-focused D2C brand, which is my area of expertise, consider giving me a follow, Jon Blair, on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in learning more about how Free to Grow's D2C accountants and fractional CFOs can help you increase profit and cash flow as you scale, check us out at freetogrowcfo.com. And until next time, scale on. Thanks for joining, Chris.
I thank you.